Hello and welcome to this episode of I Don't Know Jack About Parenting. This is part one of a four-part series as Father's Day is coming up. And today I'm going to be talking about what type of father was your father?
So the big question is this: how are parents like us, who don't have a manual, who are doing the best we can, who feel as though we aren't enough, how are we going to raise healthy, happy children who we are proud of and still keep our sanity in that process? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Ryan Roy, and welcome to I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, a podcast for parents who are being real with themselves.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, where today I'm actually going to be talking about part one of a four-part series, right? Father's Day is not too far away. It is early or late next month this year, June 21st. And as we approach Father's Day, why don't we analyze that and talk about that is what I thought. So I'm creating a four-part series, and I think to really understand ourselves as parents, it's good to recognize and see where we come from and kind of define that, so that we have a better understanding who we are. But more importantly, once we understand who we are and where we come from, we'll have a better opportunity to change the poor habits, because we all have them. I know I do. And in addition to changing the poor habits that don't serve us, later on in this series, we'll talk about what we can do to be conscious to make better decisions for our kids. So I want you to know that I am referencing a book called God Distorted. Right? It's written by John Bishop. And in this book, he defines the 8 type of fathers. And as I go through these, people are going to say, oh man, I didn't think of it that way. But there are really 8 types of fathers, and I want you as the listener, right, even if you're a mom right now, you want to listen for the type of father that you had, right? And I imagine at some level, potentially, they say women date or marry their fathers. You may have dated and or married or procreated with a man who is similar to your dad, or just a slightly different version. But if you could recognize the type of father that your husband is, or your partner, if you could recognize the type of father that you had, and maybe why you were attracted to the person that you're attracted to, if you could better understand where they're coming from, you could understand why they have, because all of us dads have shortcomings, and potentially help them by communicating with them better from a place of understanding and compassion, and pour into them in a way that makes them want to be a better father to your child. And dads, listen, I just commend you for being on the podcast right now. If you're listening to this, you just want to be a better dad. You're gathering more information, and the more information that we have as parents, the better we are. It's just our own discernment and our own experiences is how we bring that into our own parenting journey. So as I've always said, that the title of this podcast is I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, and I can't tell you how wholeheartedly I actually believe that as I just continue to educate myself, and hopefully the information here on today's podcast will help you define your father and hopefully define yourself. And once you define yourself, again, we can take measures towards being a different type of parent in a positive way. So the first type of father, and this was actually my father, as I've explained to you guys, that I grew up abandoned by my father at age 5. The father who wasn't there, right? The absent father. So it's very simple. That just wasn't present in your life. The second type of father. Now listen to these carefully, because you're going to quickly say, oh, that was my dad at some point. The father who was there, but wasn't necessarily there. It's called the passive father. When I think of the passive father, I think of the father that, when you came home, if you're at this age, if you're a little bit later, but the dad who worked hard and he sat at the dinner table and nobody really talked to him, or you caught dad reading a newspaper or watching his sports, right? He was present in the house. Maybe he paid the bills. He was physically there, but he had no emotional attachment to his family. It's the dad who may not have said, "I love you," ever, but he says, "You should have known because I always provided for you." So that's the father who was there but was not there, and that's the passive father. The third type of father is the father who expects perfection. That demanding father. The one that says, "You can do better than that. How come you're such a screw up? I mean, I told you 50 times, why don't you get it?" Did you ever hear that from a father? I mean, what do I have to do to get it through your thick skull? That's that dad, the demanding perfectionist father. That almost pained me to say, because I think there's a listener out there that heard that and heard their father, and it made them cringe. But stick around, because you may know fathers or other people. Don't hang up on me now. Listen. That you'll pass on, and you may know someone and say, "Oh, that's their dad, and that's their dad, and that's their dad," and that's why they're that way. We're coming from a place of understanding here, and it's Father's Day coming up soon, and I just felt a tugging on my heart to start educating on some of this. I tell you guys a lot of my experiences and why I do things, but it's from reading this book a number of years ago that I understood that I had an absent father, and what it is that I want to do to rescue my son. Which brings me to number 4, right? There is the father who rescues, the enabling father. Now, I have, I strive to not be this dad, because every ounce of me with having an absent father wants to be this. And the father who rescues is the dad who, when his son gets in an altercation at school and a kid says something to him and he comes home and cries, I have every desire to go and talk to that little kid and make them feel they're only 3 feet or 4 feet tall. I want to go and make them feel an inch tall, and I want to tell their parents how much they suck that their kid would say something like that to another child. I want to rescue him, because nobody ever really rescued me because they weren't there. It's the dad who goes and the coach cuts him from the team because he wasn't a good enough soccer player, a football player, a baseball player, and the coach and the dad goes there and says, "Listen, we'll work extra hard, put him on the team. He's better than you. He just had a bad tryout." He rescues his son from his shortcomings. He rescues his daughter from certain things. The dad who rescues is the enabling father. And again, I understand that I have a tendency to want to do that. And I very consciously sit back and say, he's got to learn to fend for himself. Then number 5, we have the father who is always right. The controlling father. You watch him talk to mom and he degrades mom. He talks to you, he degrades you. He sits there and tells everybody his opinion, and his opinion is law within his own house. He dictates when we get up, when we go to bed. He dictates when we eat meals. He dictates where and when and how much we spend when we go on vacations, if we go on vacations at all. It's his house, his rules. He is the controlling father. Number 6, the father who hurts others. The abusive father. See, I'm fortunate not to have these fathers, but as I picture this, and we've all known somebody who's been abused physically, emotionally, mentally, and that abusive father, I picture the father who comes in and curses out and degrades his kids. I actually have somebody in my life, a client of mine, who has shared with me that when she was studying, her father was always very hard on her, and she wasn't extremely good at math. She had challenges in that, and every time he would do those cue cards or those multiplication tables and she got something wrong, he called her stupid and smacked her in the face. That's the abusive father, the one who abuses and hurts others. Then you have the number 7, you have the father who blames, the accuser. Well, if it wasn't for my own father, if it wasn't for my upbringing, that's the reason I'm not a good dad. You know what? If your mother would just sit there and do the laundry and get things done, I'd have more time to spend with you. My job and my boss is so demanding, and you sit there and ask me questions, and I don't have time because my workload is so big. It's the father who blames others and doesn't take action for his own decision making, his own time management. It's everybody else's fault. That's the accusing father. And I imagine as I went through this list, and there is one more father out there, and I'm going to explain before I even tell you what the other father is. I hope and I wish that on my podcast here, I don't know Jack about parenting, that at some level you understand where I'm coming from with that. This is a learning and a growth process, and no matter where you are in the journey, there's so much more to learn. You could be a parent that is on your deathbed, and you're 80, 90 years old. And maybe you're one of these types of fathers or one of these types of moms, right, who didn't communicate well and never share with your kids how much you love them. And you know how much that impacted them in a negative way, and maybe it's impacting now your grandchildren. You, as a parent, still have the ability to tell your kids, I love you. You still have the ability to grow. So I hope we all strive to be this last type of parent, mother or father, it doesn't matter. And that is the father who is good. And that's what I strive to be. And as I read through those and I talked about it, listen, we all have drippings of this inside of us, right? I've accused people of doing things, wrongdoings. I've hurt others with my words, not with my fists. But I know I have with my words. In some ways, I'm sure I've shown control. As I've already discussed, I've wanted to rescue my own children at times. I do expect a higher standard because I've poured into my kids. So although I don't consider myself perfectionist in any way or demanding, there are certain standards that I hold my kids to. And there are days that work is important and I don't get to go ride the bikes with the kids or something like that. And that would be the passive father. And I will tell you, I have done everything in my power to make sure I am never going to be considered the absent father. But we all embody a little bit of all of this. But does it embody and encompass all of us where somebody can define that for us? And I think this last dad, the good father, is what we all strive to be, understanding that we may have traits or glimpses of all of these at the same time. So define your father as I just went through this. And as you define your father, figure out who that person is, and it'll give you a better understanding of who you are and why you want to emulate dad, or why so many people say, I'm never going to be like my father. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. We'll see you there.
Do you want to be the dad you wish you had? If so, go get my free book, Be the Dad You Wish You Had, at BeTheDadYouWishYouHad.com. Inside, you'll find my most effective 40 tips to quickly and easily transform yourself into the ideal dad. Go to BeTheDadYouWishYouHad.com now and get it while it's free.